Welcome to the Dirt Dude Conversations. My name's Andy Clark and I'm here today in beautiful cold Orange in the middle of winter with Fiona Hall. Thanks for allowing me onto your property here, Fiona.
No worries, Andy.
Fiona, now you're a cherry and an apple grower and packer. Would you like to tell me a little bit about your business?
So we've got a company called Caernarvon Cherry Co. We've actually got two businesses, Caernarvon Cherry Co, and it primarily packs and exports cherries for around 23 growers, from Orange and Mudgee, Wellington, down to Young, Griffith, and then the other side of the business, Bonny Glen Fruits, is a apple and cherry growing, and it's on 4 orchards and 2 lots of different cool sites. So Bernard's parents came here in the 1970s, so Bernard's a second generation orchardist, and then I married into it, and we've been packing cherries for 20 years.
Okay. And have you seen a lot of growth in the cherry packing business in that time?
In the last probably 10 years since, so traditionally in Orange it was all, everyone had a handful of cherries and packed their own cherries. It all went to Sydney markets, and you're at the helm of what the markets was at the time. Now we invested in a big cherry grader with the optical grading and consolidated a lot of that, and by having direct supply into supermarkets and exports, the growers have been getting better returns and have reinvested, and now cherries were always a cash crop for Christmas, and now they're actually invested back into it and putting a lot more effort into their inputs and not just trying to get a bit of cash at Christmas time.
And so I guess with having that growth and development going into it, where are the opportunities for the cherry industry nowadays?
I think in the export, I think we are growing too much for domestic, just domestic alone. So we need to be looking at new opportunities in our export. And China's this year just opened up for us under a fumigation protocol. But then, if we can, South Korea might be on the next list, and Thailand. Of course, we're limited by our Q-fly is our bottleneck, why we can't get into every country like the likes of New Zealand and Tasmania. But definitely in the export will be the growth.
So is biosecurity a big issue then for your export market?
Yeah, and it's the Q-fly, and I think the problem is now the medfly in WA is now meeting into the South Australia and the outbreaks. So that's our biggest challenge is the Q-fly. But we need an air freight protocol to access these countries, and they've got to be accepting of irradiation, which is a challenge, or the fumigation protocol, which isn't the best for our quality of our cherries. But they're the challenges, but if we can overcome some of those challenges, then be huge opportunities in those export markets.
And I guess from a domestic front, then, what are the biggest challenges that you're facing as a business or as an industry?
Yeah, I think the price of cherries, everything's hand harvested and hand picked and everything, and of course at the same time we're competing with the increasing stone fruit crops as they start ramping up production. So we're in that summer fruit. I think how we get consumers to purchase more often, and at the moment they only purchase on an average 2 times a year, and of course that's always before Chrissy. So we've got to get cherries on the shopping list. That's the challenge domestically in the marketing, to get cherries more regularly purchased.
And as an industry, how do you change that culture around purchasing habits?
Yeah, it's about marketing, but we've only got a very small industry, so we don't have a big marketing budget like bananas, for example. So, and only 1 cent of the marketing levy goes towards, of the levy goes towards marketing, and the rest goes to R&D. So it's a big challenge how to do that, and maybe it's the social media. I mean, I'm not quite sure, but that's the challenge of how to get consumers that's domestically and we don't value them like the Asians do, for example. To them, it's just to us domestically, it's just another fruit. But for the Asians, like, they give them away as gifts and everything like that. It's a high value.
The status.
Yeah.
Status thing as well.
Yeah, so that's our challenge with domestic marketing.
I think that's probably goes the same for a lot of products and agricultural products and the like within the domestic market. How do you engage with that consumer and sway them to your product or your way of thinking or getting them across
Over another one.
I
think we've always still got apples on the shelf in summer. We should probably look at having get back to seasonality. Apples aren't available when summer fruit's available, and how do we do that? But of course the apple producers aren't going to want that. So yeah, it'd be good if we can get back to seasonality of summer fruit for summer, and apples are available at winter and that sort of thing.
Do you see, when you talk about seasonality, do you find that there's a growing connect with producing and whether it's through farm gate sales in the region or anything like that, or do you think we're moving further away from that?
As we are getting more imports, so now we have cherries available nearly 10 months of the year because we import American cherries. It confuses the Australian producers, and I've seen American cherries packed in Australian cases. So domestically, our consumers don't really know when the cherry season is. Things like farm gates and agri-tourism, that's great, so that they can understand it, but not everyone goes to do that. So as we fill every gap when something in Australia is not produced and we import it so that it's still available, the lines get blurred when our seasons are, which is a shame.
It's a catch-22 situation, really, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
And so, I guess, so you've been in cherries for 20 years, and Bernie's been in this for
two generations.
For 2 generations in apples. Who have been the people that have, I guess, mentored you along the way, or sort of shaped how you farm and operate your business?
I look at other, not necessarily producers, but other businesses that have been successful in engaging with their consumers. Looked at other businesses in our industry and thought, well, that could work here in Orange. Some Victorian growers, for example, and I think. The older generation, I think everyone, we've learnt so much from so many people, and they're not necessarily the biggest or the best, but they've just been influential in that you admire what they've done, and it could be just one little thing, that how they've done a succession plan, and somebody else has been a really passionate, some of the Italian, this is mainly predominantly Italian people around here after the Second World War, they came. And they're just so passionate and hard working, and I think that's been influential on us. So, without putting names to people, there's been many people, but in different parts.
Just having that community knowledge share hub, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the Italians, because they were related when they first came here, all helped each other and worked with each other and helped harvest each other. I think that's gone away as the generations have come through, and they're not as congealed anymore. But I see that it's starting to become, as we need to work together. For example, to go to China in export, then we all have to go through one pack house. Not everyone's got to be registered as a grower, but there's only one shed that's going to be our shed that's registered to actually pack. So you have to work together more so if you want to access those markets. So it's naturally becoming more back to that community sort of growing.
And have you seen a lot of others coming into the industry in the region, or is it more just local growers diversifying into cherries?
Yes, I'd say that I think that's a big challenge, that we don't have any young people coming into it. They're either been an orchardist or their parents have been orchardists and they've inherited the land. So the cost of the land is very difficult. We're seeing some Chinese investment and everything coming in, but of course the challenge is getting enough management to run those orchards. Not many new entrants. and we've got an ageing apple producing population here, and there's a lot of orchard that has been pushed out and replaced by vineyard over the last 20 years.
Well, there's good wine grapes that are produced up here in Orange. There's something about the altitude, I think.
Well, a lot of the vineyards around are based around like an old apple pack house or something like that. So there used to be 400 orchardists here, and we're down to between 25 and 28, I think. It's the last count.
That's and how much of that is consolidation versus orchard space being lost?
There's the acreage has probably not changed a lot. It's just they've been, the smaller farmers, you had to either get big or get out. So they've just bought up the neighbours, and so the acreage is not as much. There's a lot more hail net on now, so
which we can maybe oversee in the background.
Background. So there was many years in the 80s of hailstorm after year, and that's when a lot of people exited the industry. So if you're going to stay in it, you need that crop protection. And so it's been more consolidation, and the ones that are in it, are committed pretty well to stay.
And so with your crop protection and the hail nets and the like, and you said that the 80s that was a big issue. Are you seeing more hail activity with an unpredictable climate, or you not really?
Not
different?
really, Andy. I think those back in the 80s, it was just for some reason more common. Well, I mean, we haven't had a good hailstorm for a few years, touch wood. But it could be hail over there and not on this side of the valley. It's just I wouldn't say it's more common, but it's always going to be around. Has been since Jesus wore shorts. So we have to be prepared for it, and you just got to protect yourself from it.
Yeah, that's right. And crop protection at the end of the day is got to be, in any sort of agricultural commodity, it's got to be your number one priority. Especially
if you're going to be a reliable supplier. And you can't just put it down to bad luck. You've got to manage it.
Yeah, it's risk management. That's farming 101, really.
Yeah.
So now you and I, we are alumni of the Nuffield program. Went through the same year, so hence I find myself on your deck today
on a freezing day.
At least, I wish it was raining here, but obviously you've had time to digest your experiences with that program, but and it is a leadership program. What does leadership look like to you, and how do you sort of, live it?
I think what I've tried to develop, and I learn a lot out of the Nuffield, is that we need to work together as farmers. It's particularly the cherry farmers. So, and you sort of need a leader within the group to make sure everyone's on track. Sharing the information. So we'll have a growers get together before the beginning of the harvest. And talk about the trends in cherries, new varieties that are coming out, how our export and domestic marketing is looking for the year, what the industry's doing, to share the industry information in marketing and everything like that. So, and it's really important, because otherwise there's so much information out there these days that farmers don't have time, or maybe can access all of it together. So they need a day where you can just put it all together, and then we work, we benchmark at the end of a cherry season. We will get all those results and the growers can benchmark against each other. So we process all the data, and they like that, and they like it, and it's a real community thing when the shed's going at cherry time, that it's everyone pulls up to take the cherries in, and there's good banter. There's a really good upbeat community, unless you've been smashed with rain or something. And together we're trying to establish that orange cherries are as good as Tasmanians, because the Tasmanians have done a very good job in promoting Tasmanian cherries, of course, but orange actually produces as good a cherries. So we need to work together to but we're on the same spray programs and a consistent quality and consistent packing, and by consolidating into one pack house, we can effectively do that. So the Nuffield leadership program probably gave me confidence, to believe in myself that I can help lead that.
Mm-hmm.
You
become that conduit to pull everyone together, so to speak.
Yeah, and I guess I didn't sort of believe that, I didn't take myself seriously enough that I could do that. And now, I get good feedback and it's great. And people sort of come to me for all that sort of stuff now. So I'm pleased. I probably wouldn't have had the confidence or, believed in myself enough had I not seen how that sort of system worked in other industries and other countries, and then coming home and putting that into practice here.
So it's essentially about having the confidence to have that open dialogue and communication to allow others into that same space, I suppose.
Yeah.
And you're creating that safe environment around it.
That's right. And sharing, and it's okay for you to tell the neighbour what you're doing because you're actually doing the same thing.
It's funny how people become very protective about their ideas because they think that gives them a competitive advantage against their neighbours when you're all in the same boat together.
That's right.
And you're actually better off all pushing in the same direction.
Exactly. And I think we've done that in cherries, and now we need to do that in the apples. Your competitor's not your neighbour. Your competitor is, the Mars bar or another area.
Yeah, they're a long way away.
Yeah, exactly. So as a whole orange, we've got the right climates, we've got the right soils for the best cherries, for the best apples. We need to promote that together and stop, and not be competing against each other. And
is there I know you're saying there's not a lot of money in the marketing aspect of it, but is there a regional sort of marketing initiative to make orange, whether it's cherries or wine or as a conglomerate, to really sort of put yourself on the map in that way?
So there's an organisation, was Brand Orange, now it's similar, but it's about promoting orange food and wine. So yes, we need to be, which we're starting to do, work with the tourism industry to promote the products of orange into China and domestically, and I think that's a great way of doing it. So it's not just it's working together within your own industry, but it's working with the other industries in orange as well.
Because you never know where you're going to find a touch point that's similar, and many hands make light work in that.
Absolutely.
On that front, so
yeah.
It's a beautiful part of the world. You're whilst it might be fresh, fortunately the tea is warm, so we keep ourselves occupied.
But we need the cold anyway. We need it for the chill hours and for our cherries. So that's why it's good. But we are seeing in some areas that the cherries aren't setting as the climate change. So some of those warmer climates, I think, will fall off the bandwagon. If the climate change keeps happening. So once it's cold, it's meant to be.
Yeah, good. Thank you for your time today,
Thanks,
Fiona.
Andy.
And all the best for the coming season.
Thanks, Andy.
Cheers.